Dulcie. I'm Medical Director at Health Insight Utah, and we are in a partnership with the Scope Clinic and Dr. Kelly Hatch, and Diane, and the Utah Department of Health, who's represented by Kelly. And we've been doing a project over this last year to encourage breast and colon cancer screening. So you guys have probably noticed some of the events occurring, and we're really excited today to have Karen Miller here to talk about her family's experience with losing a very important person, not just to her family, but to our community. How many people ever saw Late Night with Doug Miller? Okay, yeah, so I didn't know, he was on for 29 years. And in 2006, he tragically died of a preventable disease, which is colon cancer. And Karen's family has been willing to partner with the Utah Department of Health for one of the most successful campaigns in increasing the numbers of screens we've done in detections of colon cancer in the history of the health department. So her family partnering with our state and telling their story has been an amazing boon for preventing death from colon cancer. So we are excited to actually hear the story that she tells, to promote screening, to promote what families, friends, doctors, colleagues can do for one another, which is encourage us all to have the right screen for colon cancer at the right time. So Karen, like I said, has been partnering with the health department for five years, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and talking about her story. She speaks at different events, and we're happy to have her here today. And just again, thank you for what you're doing for the Utah community and sharing your dad's story and really making this something real for folks. And Karen Miller.
Thank you. Thanks so much. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here. I, of course, love to talk about my dad, and I love him so much. And people always ask me, what was he really like? And what you saw on his shows was who he was. He was such a jovial, fun-loving man. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about him, some of his early life that people don't know so much about. He grew up in a small little town in southern Arkansas called El Dorado, Arkansas. It was just over the border from Louisiana. In fact, when we'd go visit, we'd fly into Shreveport, Louisiana, and then drive up into El Dorado, Arkansas. And he was a straight A student, he was a student body president, and he was a very accomplished piano player. He played in several bands growing up, and he would play in bars on Friday and Saturday nights, and then he would play in two different, a Methodist and a Presbyterian church on Sunday mornings. So he just was a well-rounded, fun guy. And when he went to college, he got a job at KARK, and he was actually the weatherman on the radio in Arkansas, and he was in Little Rock, Arkansas, and there happened to be somebody in town from Salt Lake City, a KSL radio employee. He came into Little Rock and heard this voice on the KARK, small little station, in 1977, and said, we've got to get that voice in Utah. And they brought my dad out here, had him interview. They offered him the position of news director at KSL Radio, and my dad called my mom, and he's like, I really like this. Maybe we found a house, and it's right next to a steak building. And my mom said, I don't want to live next to a restaurant. I'm like, no. A whole different kind of. And so anyways, we up and the family moved from Arkansas to Utah. And it was just a great experience. At first he thought, it'll just be a little stepping stone. I'll be here for 3 years, and then we'll move on to bigger and better. And of course, the Utah outdoor bug just bit deep into my dad, and here he stayed for the rest of his life. And so for 29 years, like she mentioned, my dad was on the radio and TV, and then had his beloved outdoor show. And then all of that came to a very sudden end when he died almost instantly. You'll hear the story, but died very quickly from colon cancer. So that's why I'm here to talk to you about colon cancer, and you can't really talk about colon cancer without talking about colonoscopies. And we can totally admit it, colonoscopies, it's a funny word, it's silly. Nobody can talk about a colonoscopy without first thinking kind of a little squeamish. It's a punchline on lots of TV shows, and you know what, it is, and it's okay to admit it's kind of a funny thing. Why? Because we're talking about our rear ends. We're talking about our naked rear ends. We're talking about cameras and a stranger, a doctor, but still a stranger, and that camera in your rear end. It's a little uncomfortable. I mean, it takes most of us 18 shots at selfies that we totally are controlling, and it's one of our best features. Our behind's not. And before we'll post that on Facebook, we're going to try that 15 times. But, so thinking about a camera on our rear end, it's a little uncomfortable. So this video explains why colonoscopies are a little bit funny to us.
You have some lovely children and a lovely wife. You have a healthy bank account and had a healthy life. But you knew the day was coming. It was always meant to be. The doctor says it's time to have a colonoscopy. Oh, colonoscopy. A wonderful procedure, as everyone can see. You know, because I decided to take a quality. This is a early schedule for colonoscopy. There is some preparation that you should know about. You have to drink this fluid that will surely clean you out. They take a certain instrument to look around inside, and honestly, I'll tell you, it can be a bumpy ride. Oh, colonoscopy is a wonderful procedure to help prevent disease. Stay close to a bathroom and careful when you sneeze. It's not a lot of pleasure, it's not a lot of fun, but now you're turning 40, so you know it must be done. It's not an ordinary, typical exam. You lay down on the table and then bam. Oh, wonderful procedure, I'm sure you will agree. And never underestimate how thorough they will be. Yes, it's good to take your medicine, colonoscopy.
Me, and then later he went crib and rocking chair shopping with me. We were very, very close, and I'm super lucky to have such a wonderful daddy. And colon cancer, he died in 21 days. We didn't even know it was colon cancer that entire 21 days, but it was such a quick event. And I'm going to share with you, I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and some very horrific things happened in his body, things that I did not even know were possibilities to happen to the human body. I'm going to detail those just briefly. I am going to explain some of the things. Some of the things I'm not saying to gross you out, and I'm not saying to scare you about colon cancer. I'm telling you those things to show you what a colonoscopy, silly though it may seem, what a colonoscopy can prevent from happening in your life. So, on day 1, July 31st, it was a Monday. That weekend before, we had all gone camping, the whole family, and he had just returned from a big trip to Alaska. Got home, we packed everything up, went camping. Not a problem in the world, not a symptom, not a question. We played hard all weekend. He had just we go camping, if any of you have heard of Fairview, we have some land up Fairview Canyon, and we had just bought another little plot of land. And so we spent that whole weekend, he had a new GPS, we dropped the cookies all over, we hiked the whole mountainside, not a problem in the world. And then we came home Sunday night, he went to work on Monday, everything was fine. He went out to lunch with some friends, everything was still fine. After lunch, he had just kind of an upset stomach, didn't feel quite right. He even said, jokingly, I think I had some bad beans at lunch. So he decided just to go home early, crawled into bed, just going to sleep it off. Later that afternoon, he was in a lot of pain, but my mom said, do you want to go to the doctor? No, it's fine, maybe a stomach bug, it'll be fine. By late that night, we knew something was wrong when he said, you need to take me to the emergency room. Because that was not in his vocabulary. So we took him to the emergency room closest to our house. So the initial testing showed that he had inflamed intestinal tract, which he had years before had a bout of diverticulitis, and so they thought, probably got diverticulitis, but your white blood cell count is very, very high, so we want to just pump you full of antibiotics, get that white blood cell count down a little bit, then we'll go in and see what part of your intestinal tract has diverticulitis, what we need to take out, and we'll get you better. So that was the plan at that point, to just wait. This was day 2, and wait for surgery. By day 3, his vitals were weakening. He was in and out of consciousness, and they decided, this is not a safe time to do surgery, but if we don't do surgery, you're not going to be here for surgery. So they rushed him into surgery. Right before we got to go right down with the bed to the room of the surgery department, and right before they wheeled him in, the doctor said, you know, it's probably not what we're looking at, but I should tell you, I have seen colon cancer present this way before. And I was instantly enraged. Not that he would say, you know, it's colon cancer, just that I thought, why would you jump to such an outrageous conclusion? It's diverticulitis. You even said so. Why would you even think such a thing? I just thought he had lost his mind. Why would you say such a thing? But they wheeled him into surgery, and then we sat out in the waiting room. And about 3 hours went by, and we thought he was in surgery. Turns out, before they even started surgery, when they went to give him the anesthesia, his heart stopped and he stopped breathing. And so for the next hours, they had a team of about 20 physicians and nurses, I don't know who all, but were in that room. They said about 20 people were trying to resuscitate him. So a doctor came out and he said, it's really grave. If he lives, he will be flown by life flight to LDS Hospital. And so the only thing for you to do right now is for the family to drive to LDS Hospital. He's either going to die here right now or he'll end up there. And we didn't know what to do, and he just said, get in your car and go to LDS Hospital. So we got to LDS Hospital about midnight. We didn't know until 7 o'clock the next morning. Nobody let us know if he had arrived by life flight, if he was dead at the first hospital. We had no idea. And finally a doctor came in and said that he had made it to LDS Hospital. He had had surgery. They had removed the part of his intestines that they thought were maybe affected by diverticulitis, but they said something else is wrong. He's very, very sick, and he would not be this sick from diverticulitis. So they said we just need to figure out what's going on. Day 4, he was in a coma, on life support. The doctors, different doctor, you have the doctor of the day, who, by the way, all of the doctors were absolutely wonderful. We had a great team. And I had never had any involvement with nurses before, outside of when you go to the doctor and they take your blood pressure, or when I have had my children and they kind of check on you all day long. I did not know the lifeline, the absolute total support that nurses provide you in an emergency situation like that. Nurses are blessed, blessed, beautiful people. And every day a doctor would tell us, he's probably not going to live through today because of whatever reason it was of the hour. His whole body was shutting down. The doctors explained to us that he was in septic shock, meaning that the infection was rampant through his entire body, and his organs were shutting down one by one. They thought he had zero brain function. They thought he was brain dead. He had suffered a massive, massive heart attack, they said, and his kidneys had completely stopped working. He was on continuous dialysis, and he had a fever. I had no idea what a fever could do to the body, but his fever was so high they had packed his entire body from feet to neck in bags of ice. He's just surrounded in ice, and they set up these big fans. You know, like maybe if you had some water damage in your house and they bring in the big fans to dry out your carpet? His room was surrounded in these big fans, just blowing as much air as they could on him. Due to the septic shock, his body was swollen beyond recognition. His body was, when he first went into the hospital, his weight was 220 pounds. By day 6, before that, the septic shock, his body had swelled up to over 420 pounds. At this point, his skin could no longer hold him together. It was on this day that one of the life flight nurses, this is really a funny story, I promise. One of the life flight nurses came in and she said, I just shared with you what happened on the life flight. Apparently it's standard procedure to shave facial hair when somebody's on life flight, helicopter. And they said it was like an old 1980s Life cereal commercial because they kept passing back and forth the razor saying, I'm not going to shave Doug Miller, you shave Doug Miller. I'm not going to shave Doug Miller, you shave Doug Miller. And they compromised, and they shaved him to about right here, just up over his jawbone. And I just hugged her because the unrecognizable form laying in that bed that was dying and breaking my heart, it was my dad, but I couldn't find my dad. But those beautiful white whiskers, and I had never said before they were beautiful, but they were beautiful white whiskers. I could see that that was my dad. So I thank them forever that they had that fight and broke the rules and did not shave his beard that big. He set a record. You don't want to set this record, but they came in and told us he broke a record. His blood pressure was so low. They had so many different medications in him to try to get him to have some level of blood pressure. He broke a record and had 15 machines pumping medicine into him. They said that was the highest they had ever had, and that he was by far the sickest person in the hospital. So, day 8, pathology came back from that bit of intestine that they had removed from the surgery, and they said it's colon cancer. So at this point, remember when I had been angry about why would you even say colon cancer? Well, now we were thrilled. Okay, this is why he's so sick. It's not diverticulitis. There's an explanation as to why he's so sick. We can do something about it. Let's start fighting that. So they removed his entire colon. They placed an ileostomy bag. And he was still in a coma for 8, 9, these days. He just was in the coma. There was not any sign of improvement, but he wasn't getting worse at that point. Day 12. So I walked into his room, and I said, "Good morning, handsome." His eyes had been open the entire time, but when I said, "Good morning, handsome," I could instantly see there was a soul behind those eyes. I knew in a second he was there. And he was completely paralyzed. The septic shock had eaten away. How it was explained to me, you have a coating on your nerves that helps the messages go from your brain to what you're trying to do. And the septic shock had eaten the coating off of his nerves, so he couldn't, the messages weren't being sent. And he was completely paralyzed because of this, except for he could ever so slightly. You could barely even perceive it, but he could nod his head, yes, just the tiniest little bit, or shake it no, and he could blink, and he could move his mouth. He had the breathing tubes and everything. It's not like he could speak, but when you're not ready for somebody to be yawning because the rest of their body isn't moving, and all of a sudden I thought he was screaming or something because I just see his mouth in full on, and I panicked, and the doctor's like, "He's yawning." Well, that's good. But it was a beautiful, beautiful day because he was out of the coma. He wasn't brain dead. It was the first time we'd had any moment of hope. And when you're in the shock trauma waiting room, I noticed when we first got there, I noticed there were some people that were in devastation like us, and then there were other people that were laughing and talking, and I thought, what in the world? How are you laughing and talking? And I realized that there are phases in the waiting room. You have to have these moments of relief, or you just won't make it. And so once he had woken up from the coma, I realized, okay, we can take a breath, and we can dare to have a hope that maybe he, like some of these other patients I see that are being supported and they're walking down the hall, maybe my dad's going to be there too. It's not as drastic, not as terrible as we thought. He is terrified, even though he can't say it. You can see in his eyes, which suddenly became so expressive, he's absolutely terrified. He can't move, he can't talk, he doesn't know what's going on. He never did know he had colon cancer. And you could just see his eyes go from absolute hatred at me, at the doctors, at everybody. I mean, he would just burn these looks of, if I could kill you, I would kill you. Not really, but I mean, that's just what you could see, the anger and fear in his eyes of not knowing what's going on. Then he kind of slipped back down. He was in and out of consciousness again for the next several days. Day 18, his blood pressure finally improved, and they were able to actually back off some of the medicines. And so we thought, if he beats the septic shock, at this point, the fight to save his life was to beat the septic shock. We hadn't even gotten to colon cancer at that point. Septic shock was killing his body. So we thought, okay, now we can beat septic shock and have hope for the future. On day 19, they decided, since his body has been laying there completely not moving for 19 days, let's bring in a physical therapist and work on his limbs. So he was still in the bed, but a physical therapist came in and would just kind of pick up and move his legs and move his arms. That was great news for us. Okay, the morning of the 20th day, they moved his bed and moved him up actually into a sitting position. So for the first time, instead of looking over him, they could look at him. And it sounds so simple, but it meant so much to us. And again, we're thinking, okay, we're going to beat this. Then we're going to fight colon cancer. We're going to make this. The afternoon of the 20th, when they laid him back down from the seated position, and the very first time it just so happened that my 2 kids came into the room to see Grandpa, because I hadn't let them see him until then. Right as they came in, you could tell something happened to his body. His body moved funny, and alarms started going off everywhere. And he had suffered his first stroke. And one of his eyes went off to the side. And then within a few minutes, he suffered a second stroke. And the doctors were very great at that point to say to us, we're no longer fighting to save his life. At this point, we're prolonging his death. He'll never open his eyes again. He'll never breathe on his own again. He'll never move on his own again. So the decision had been made for us at that point. What was next for us was to remove him from life support. Taking somebody off of life support is not at all what you see on TV or what I thought it was going to be. It wasn't flipping a switch or unplugging something. It was hours of signing papers and making decisions. Do you want harp music played in the room? What kind of medication do you want? Any medication administered? What do you want to happen in the room? You have to decide all of that. You have to decide how your loved one's going to die. It took all day. We were there at 7 o'clock that morning, and he was not completely removed from all of the life-supporting equipment and medication until 5 p.m. That's how long it took. And at 8:03, 3 hours and 3 minutes later, he took his last breath, and he slipped from our arms into God's. I have to share with you really quickly. So right as he passed away, I had no idea how I was ever going to leave that room. I had pretty much stayed in that room for the entire 21 days. And I thought, they're going to have to drag me out. I don't know how to walk away from this. And somebody came in luckily and said, you need to turn on the TV. And so we turned it on, and it was Channel 2. And they did this amazing tribute to my dad. And it was my dad. It was him hunting and fishing and laughing and enjoying life. And it was about a 20-minute long session. I watched that, and I just turned around and said, love you, Daddy. And I walked out because that was my dad. Not what was right there. So, just before my dad passed away, a couple years before, unbeknownst to me, the Utah Department of Health had started a campaign to increase the awareness of colon cancer and colonoscopies in the state of Utah. So after my dad passed away, they contacted me and said, would you be willing to share your story? My dad was a storyteller that touched so many people's lives. I said, absolutely. I would share his story in a second. So this is the first commercial that they had me do.
People knew my dad as the outdoorsman, but he was also my dad. He was a fun grandpa. He wanted them to enjoy and love everything as much as he did. That's the thing that I think I still have the hardest time with, is thinking about what they won't have. We didn't know it was colon cancer at first. He didn't complain of any special back problems or stomach problems. He felt fine. It started with just a minor stomach ache that everybody has had. My dad's life ended in the most exposed, dehumanizing, horrific way. His body was so full of infection because the colon cancer had perforated his bowel and it shut down all of his organs. There's no reason he should be gone. My dad was 58 years old. He had not had a colonoscopy. Had he gotten one at 50, he would still be here today.
And they also ran newspaper ads and billboards. And I did not know that they had done anything besides the billboards. And those billboards were so cute. I just loved his face on those billboards. And usually when I saw them, I thought, aw. Sometimes when I would see them, it would be a little stab in the heart. One day I was driving around delivering stuff with work, and I kept seeing his billboard, and that day it was kind of a stab. I kept just thinking, well, then I was stopped at a red light. I was the very first car at the intersection. And what drives in front of me? The bus. And I just took that right from my dad. He was saying, all right, you had your moment. Get over it. So that was a fun one. I appreciated that. And then I've done 4 commercials. This is the latest one that's running right now.
My dad called himself a storyteller. He loved to share stories of his adventures in the great outdoors. And now his biggest story, his last story, it is my story to share. My dad was stolen from all of us because of colon cancer. And now to know that his story is having such an impact on the community, saving lives, helping families, he would be so proud. People have reasons for not getting a colonoscopy. Maybe say it's too embarrassing, or I don't have the time. My dad was 58 years old when he died from colon cancer. He had never had a colonoscopy. Had he gotten one at 50, he would still be here. And if you won't get a colonoscopy for yourself, get one for your family. This was my dad. He was amazing. We lost him. Don't let that happen to your family. Get a colonoscopy.
Okay, so results of the campaign. I know we're running tight on time, so we'll go just as quickly as we can through this last little bit. When they surveyed people in 2003 before the campaign, 43% of people were aware of colon cancer and what you could do to prevent it, a colonoscopy. And then after the campaign started, 69%. It's an amazing increase. And in fact, the health department was awarded this award because of the tremendous change in the community from this campaign. And I understand that different health departments in other states are now running it too, and it has shown increases in their areas as well. Okay, so what you need to know is that colon cancer is the second leading cause of cancer deaths in Utah. There are no early warning signs, just like my dad. We were hiking all over a mountain, everything was fine. At that point, he basically had already lost the war. I mean, it was a matter of hours. It was the next day that he was in the hospital, basically dead, except for the medication kept him alive for 21 days. There are no early warning symptoms. Colon cancer is preventable, treatable, and beatable if it is caught early enough, which is caught through a colonoscopy. And 75% of colorectal cancers occur when there hasn't been family history. My dad's parents, grandparents, and all of his aunts and uncles lived into their 80s and 90s. Not a single one of them died from cancer. There was not history of this. There will be an estimated 780 new cases of colon cancer in Utah. The colonoscopy, here's the big one. Pay attention to this. Colonoscopy is the most effective way to detect and prevent colorectal cancer. Abnormal growths, you've heard people say I had a polyp removed. The abnormal growths can be removed at the time of the colonoscopy, preventing colon cancer. Not all polyps are cancerous, but over time they can become cancerous. So the colonoscopy, go in, they cut them out and remove them right then so they don't get the chance to turn into cancer. And then, depending on what they find, you're good for 10 years. And 50 is the age that you need to go in and get a colonoscopy unless you have a family history or if somebody's been diagnosed with it 10 years before, but 50 is the big number. And a lot of people have asked me about, do insurance cover it? We don't need to go into all that today, but just talk
Yes,
with your...
it does, 100%.
Yes, and it covers it, and with the Affordable Care Act, a lot of preventative services are now covered, including colonoscopies. So, and then the health department has services to help cover for people that do need financial coverage. So, I know we are short on time. Okay, what this is, I'll tell you really quickly. My daddy saved my life. I was too early. It wasn't my time to have a colonoscopy, but sort of as a thank you for these commercials, the health department set me up to have a colonoscopy. I could have gone to dinner, but no, I'm just kidding. And
so that was your preparation, huh?
yes. So what this is fire in the whole chateau. My husband did all this.
I love it.
While the kids and I were downstairs, they were cheering me on. Give the drink you have to take. There's no lie, it's horrible. It's nasty stuff. But you drink it, you're fine. And let me tell you this too. The war story, the horror stories, it's not that bad. I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be like, I have the stomach flu, I'm going to be dying, it's going to be miserable. You have to go to the bathroom. That's it. That's it. You're not in pain, you go to the bathroom. So the kids are rooting me, they're cheering me on as I drink. They're like, go, 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 go. And have no idea my husband has disappeared. Well, after I finished the drink, he says, honey, let's go upstairs. Okay, if love can be wrapped up in one gesture, the fire in the whole chateau. That was pretty nice. So he had set up, he said, and here's your artillery bunker. So you can see these. Well, when you turn the corner, he had about 50 rolls of toilet paper stacked up. Air freshener, he had movies, like a little romance novel with even all out. So, but I had my first colonoscopy. the doctor said, why are you here? I was 37 at the time. And I said, well, the health department gave me one as a present. And so he said, well, good, let's just get in there and get a good baseline. So I went to sleep, and I woke up with the nurse saying, Karen, it's time to wake up. And I thought, oh, that was fast. And she said, Karen, you and your dad saved your life today. And I thought, wait, what is she talking about? She's confused. It couldn't be me that's confused, it's her that's confused. And she's helping me because I thought I had done a really good job buttoning up my shirt, but I had all the buttons in the wrong places. And she helps me get all dressed, and she takes me into a room where the doctor and my husband are sitting. And he said, Karen, we'll have to wait for pathology, but it looks like cancer. And I still thought, what? You guys are so confused. It was my dad. And the polyps that they found in me, one of them had cancer cells in it. It was still completely in the polyp. It was half an hour. I slept through the entire thing, and I was healthier when I woke up than I was when I went in, and that was all that had to happen. It was gone. Then I had to go in every year, and now I've graduated to 3 years. But you know, that's the reason right there to get a colonoscopy. I knew nothing was wrong. I felt nothing. I drank the drink, had a silly moment in the bathroom, went to the bathroom a lot, but it wasn't horrible. The next day, my life was saved. I was 37 years old. And the doctor said, had I not come in then, had I waited till I was 40, it would have been a very, very different story. So, since then, as you know, I kind of do things about colon cancer, and we wear these Kick Colon shirts that my family and I made. We go all over the place with our shirts. People might think we're a little weird, but it's sort of our family now. And you know, my dad was my hero, and if he can make an impact on the community that loved him so much by teaching people, hey, don't let this happen in your home, then it's my pleasure to share his story. And thank you very much.